The key takeaways is this is a really complicated situation. The geopolitics are terrifying, saddening, complex. The markets themselves are caught between that, inflation, a tightening Fed, slowing growth. It's a very complicated world. This is not the time for widows and orphans. This is not the time to make big bets, because this is the time you will get carried out. So be very careful in what you do. Manage your risk very carefully. So this is going to tie back to Bill Tye as well. So Bill Tye talked about petrodollars and electrodollars, and that crypto is the electrodollar based around electricity, while the petrodollar was based around supply and demand for oil. So we've been in a petrodollar system since we floated off the gold standard. Now, what does that mean? It meant that the US was one of the biggest importers of crude oil in the world, if not the biggest importer. So they would spend dollars, and these dollars floated around the global system, keeping it liquid. But the shale oil revolution, as Russell points out, did the opposite. It meant that the US didn't need to import as much. Yes, it has to import some different grades of crude and stuff like that, but generally speaking, it's self-sufficient in oil. So that is a lot less dollars into the global system. So if there's a lot less dollars in the global system, the dollar goes up. It's like ETH burning. It's like Bitcoin supply. There's less dollars sloshing around the global system because the US aren't spending it. It drives the dollar higher. And that's one of the things that's kept the dollar strong for a period of time. Tracy Shuchart talks about, Tony Greer, that there's a big commodity supply issue and a reasonable amount of demand. I think the demand side of the equation will be weaker going forwards. I get the structural issues. I don't like owning commodities in spiky markets like this, where you get news flow and it falls 20% overnight. I think that's hard. Commodity producers, maybe you've got a better opportunity, but they've been very spiky. So if you're not in the trade, it's not a trade I can enter now. The pressure, and are we in a commodity super cycle? The answer is I don't know. It's possible. We're due one at some point. I just don't know where the demand side of the equation is, except for ESG demand. So I can see the copper side, the nickel side. There's a whole bunch of these things that are very important in that. And so, with this reduced supply and normal demand in crude, I can understand the prices might remain high. Yeah. Precious metals, as we talked about, in a world where money's getting confiscated, in a world of inflation, of a world of geopolitical risks, it's got to be good. I mean, gold made a new high, backed off it. It probably consolidates for a while. And then if I look at the long-term chart of gold, particularly the inflation-adjusted chart, it's a giant cup and handle formation. And my guess is gold goes to 2,500 plus. That's why I find it ridiculous that people insult each other for, I'm a commodity person, that's a tech person, those guys are idiots. It all works in the right way at the right time. I've been waiting to buy these blown up tech stocks ever since I talked about the exponential age thesis. I've not bought any of them yet because they were 2 standard deviations overbought versus the log trend. And I've been waiting to get to 1 or 2 standard deviations oversold. And lo and behold, that's where we are now. So I'm kind of looking at them very actively and looking for a change in the macro to buy them. I don't think it's all about money. It's the internet of value. That's why Web3 has become the narrative. So Bitcoin is a different beast and it's more of a reserve asset. Does it turn into a fully fledged medium of exchange and currency? Yeah, but that's not happening for 20 years. It's possible. I doubt it, because governments want to own their supply of money. They want their own tokens for their own community, like everybody else is going to have tokens for their community. But, I think as a reserve asset, Bitcoin works. But what we're actually talking about is the way of storing, transferring, and recording ownership and value in the digital age. Governments are not going to get in the way of that. And Gary Gensler made it, not Gary Gensler, sorry, the president made it pretty clear that it's all fine. They just want to make sure it's regulated. If anybody had ever told you 10 years ago that inflation was going to be at 8% and bond yields were going to be sub 2, they'd have laughed in your face.
Yeah.
So it tells you there's something people don't fully understand about this.
Yeah.
And it's about the forward inflation expectations driven by demographics and a debt super cycle. So my view is higher inflation is disinflationary, forward looking. And the bond market is telling you something similar. we think we know, and that these are all narratives, right? Everything we have is a narrative. And so, yeah, memes rule the world, and gold as an inflation asset was a meme that's ruled since the 1970s because it worked. But maybe that wasn't the only reason gold worked. Maybe there were different reasons. So
Yeah.
people need to be open, and I think part of it is the denominator idea. So, once you took gold off the dollar off the gold standard, you're changing the denominator as opposed to just about the inflation numbers. So there's a lot to pass out, and nobody knows the answer. I don't know the full answers, but I know demographics probably explain the majority of it. The Europeans know they have a problem having dependency on foreign oil and gas. They're going to have to cobble together something, whether they do a backdoor deal with Russia or try and get more in from Algeria or figure out how to get it from Turkey, anything to keep it going. But given this shock, the one thing they have to do is get off oil and gas. So I do not think they're going to waver in their application of the EU ETS carbon system. I think they need utilities, power producers, manufacturers, shipping, and all of the things that come under this to start allocating their efforts on greener energy, which is driving an investment cycle as well. And I know I see people all the time laughing at it. It's like, you know what? The world without having to use oil and using abundant sources is a better world. Now, that doesn't happen overnight, and that
Right.
creates these supply issues because you're pushing forward the narrative of ESG or trying to reduce the narrative of fossil fuels, but you've got a mismatch, and you're going to see these kind of squeezy prices until that happens. But
Yeah.
over time, we will see a lot of technological advancements. People say, well, it's impossible. It's impossible right now to generate that much power. And obviously, nuclear is the other one that's going to come into this.